I was watching the end of the hockey game last night, and something akin to a Trump rally broke out. If you were watching, I don't know, there may be a handful of you who are hockey fans in our audience. If you were watching near the end of the game last night between the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Tampa Bay Lightning, there was a bit of a scrum between the players. They're not getting along too terribly well after 6 games in this playoff series. And it did resemble a little bit of what you might have seen if you were catching any of the coverage after Trump's rally broke up in Albuquerque last night. And the communists came out and had a riot in the streets. And for a lot of you folks out there who may have missed it, and you might still have missed it this morning, I've got to share this with you. I got out of bed today, poured my morning coffee, was eating my breakfast, and I turned on the television and I was flipping back and forth between Fox and Friends and then MSDNC's Morning Joe. Fox and Friends had extensive coverage of the riot outside the Trump rally. We should say again, following the Trump rally, it did not take place during it. And then over at MSDNC, there was nary a mention of it because I know what's going on here. They're looking at it in the liberal media and saying, this looks bad for our side. In other words, if we have a lot of our socialist friends out there, our fellow travelers, and they're smashing windows and burning things in the streets and fighting with police officers, it might not necessarily go well for us, and it might actually give some ammunition to Trump's campaign. So they avoided it. I sat there and I watched Morning Joe for almost a full hour as I was getting ready for work. And at no point did any of the hosts on that program, and I'll tell you what, you want to talk about a panel of panty waste, but no one mentioned what happened in New Mexico. Instead, it was, well, as you all know, Donald Trump's behavior in the last couple of weeks clearly means Trump is trying to lose this race. And he's insulted Elizabeth Warren. And of course, Elizabeth Warren is the smartest and most beautiful human being in America. And Americans just love her to death. And because of that, Donald Trump is going to lose the election. Don't you agree, Willie? Well, yes, Joe, I absolutely agree, and so does my dog and my wife, and sometimes even some of my relatives who all live here in Manhattan, just like I do. And I'm sure that people in Nebraska and Idaho and Montana and Utah and Wyoming, that they all agree with us. So I'm looking at all of this morning and I'm scratching my head and I'm thinking, the big story is the fact that these people were not only taking off their clothes last night, setting their clothes on fire, then throwing the clothes at the police officers, they were walking around waving Mexican flags while they do it. Now, I have some Irish ancestry in my family, about half of each side of my parents' families. And when I was younger, I used to take part in some of the St. Patrick's Day celebrations. But never at any point did I run up and down the street waving the Irish tricolor, talking about how we're going to take over the United States. And that if we'd only bring more Irish people here and sneak them in the dark of night in the holds of trucks or have them swim rivers, we could take over the country and then demand that we get a free lunch and that the politicians allow more of us to come here. Never happened. Never did anything like that. But this is what's going on. You've got this crowd, and of course they've been listening to Sanders tell them that everything will be free and that we'll dissolve the borders and that everybody here that works for a living is going to take care of everyone who doesn't. And I don't think this is going to sell well with the American electorate, even many of those Democrats out there. It's 10 minutes after 8 o'clock. Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com. Over at the Clinton News Network, known as CNN, they have a new director of programming, and he used to be with something called The Today Show. He has been gradually trying to wean that network off its reputation as being a liberal mouthpiece. And he's even admitted they now understand at CNN that about half of America is conservative, and that half of America doesn't buy into all the liberal baloney. So during the course of some of the coverage last night on CNN, Wolf Blitzer tossed to a reporter in Albuquerque by the name of Dan Simon, and Dan Simon just happened to be in the middle of this riot.
We're keeping a close eye on the situation, Wolf. You can see that there's some kind of explosive device right in front of us. We're going to move. We're moving back, Wolf. You can see the smoke. I don't know if this is a flash grenade that police have just set off or if this is from the protesters, but you can see that things now are steadily eroding. We're going to move back a little bit, Wolf. You can see the smoke. Now lots of protesters are throwing rocks at police. This has now descended into chaos as we're moving back.
It looks like it's tear gas. Is it tear
We're still
gas over
watching
there,
the
Dan?
situation, Wolf.
That's a little bit
It
of
is
what was
definitely not
going
tear
on.
gas. Some type of smoke or flash grenade. Not quite sure exactly what it was.
That's a little bit of a taste of what was taking place in Albuquerque last night. If you'd like to reach our program, 736-0300. That's 736-0300. We have a caller with us, and you're on the air on KLIX.
Good morning, Bill. This is what you call the liberal side reaping what they sow. For the last presidential season, Obama has let everybody that seems to have some form of grievance get their way and act like little spoiled children. So here we go. They don't like what Trump says, so let's taunt the police, throw things at the police, tear down fences, and act like little kids.
And loot stores. Loot the stores of people who sell them products otherwise.
Yeah, so some of the main things they complain about. We talk about Ferguson. That's the one that really set it off. When we had senators and stuff say, "Oh, just stand back. They deserve the right to protest." Well, in the good old days, you talked about how your ancestry didn't have riots. Well, in the good old days, if you acted up like that, you had your head bashed in.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. And nowadays, they stand back and let it happen. If you spoil a kid, sooner or later, that kid is going to come back and bite you in the ass. And it's happened through generation to generation and generation.
Well,
and the people learn.
I thank you much for the input. And in response to that, in 1863, Irish immigrants in New York did have a riot, a draft riot, and the Army simply came in and took care of it. I'll get to my next caller in just a moment. Whenever you watch media talk about history in this country, they'll say, well, after Kent State in 1970, Americans were horrified by the actions of their government. No, liberals in media were horrified. Liberal academics who don't work for a living on campus were horrified. The majority of Americans saw that and said, dang straight, maybe it'll shut them up now. You're up next. You're on the air with Bill Colley. It's 8:14, and you're on KLIX.
Your previous caller mentioned history. Let me remind them what, and I happen to be in L.A. working at USC when the riots broke out. And
Did you participate at all, or?
No, I didn't participate. I just was taking pictures and all that deal. But that's what happens. I mean, not all our party, party people that run around and Winnebagoes to the no protest. No, this is how poor people protest. Okay?
They break the laws and steal things, I guess, huh? Hello? See, so that makes it all right because they're poor people, and that's just how they do it. Okay. In other words, they don't have any manners or any brains, and they think the world owes them a living. And so therefore you go out and smash and you grab. And then, it's discount shopping. This is an opportunity to go out and take from the man. That's what the caller is telling us. 8:15, got 54 right now, on our way maybe to 70 today. Wouldn't that be nice? It's been a long time, hasn't it? Since at least about a week and a half ago. At least it feels that way. Bill Colley with you on KLIX, 736-0300, 736-0300. And you're next. You're on the air.
Morning, Bill. Yeah, I think the real story here is I think the Democrat Party is unraveling very quickly. They seem to be in a pretty big distress because this doesn't, the last caller won't admit it, but this doesn't look very good for them, these riots, and the 50% of them are Bernie supporters and seem to be pretty diehard Bernie supporters, and they're not going to show up and vote Hillary. And the more Trump talks about the Clintons and their scandals, I think things aren't looking so good for them myself.
I would agree with that, and thank you much for the call. I just saw a report today that the Democrats are looking to dump Debbie Wasserman Schultz from her post in the DNC, and she's a Clinton ally because they feel that she so botched it with Mrs. Clinton. And that's why Bernie Sanders is still hanging around at this point. I rarely ever do I recommend something long that I think people should read, but if you have an opportunity to go search this on the computer, look for the name Walter Russell Mead. Now, Professor Mead is a whale of a writer. I would not say that he is either left-wing or right-wing, but he's a tremendous writer, And he has a piece that was published at the American Interest, and I happened to see it online this morning. But if you go search his name, it's called his story is called The Meaning of Mr. Trump. Now, I printed this out, and I'll tell you what, you better take 5 to 10 minutes to try and read it. It's several pages long, but I was reading through some of it, and I just wanted to share a little of it with you, and I think that this explains why we're seeing all of this happen. Because the rioting in the streets is just part of that unraveling. People are seeing this going on in every aspect of their lives. Institutions are failing. The government can't seem to get a hold on any problem that it faces. He writes, Trump is an unconventional candidate whose proposition to the electorate isn't about particular policy stance, experience, or credentials, or even personal and political honesty. Trump is the purest expression of the politics of no that I personally can recall. And he writes he's the candidate for people who think the conventional wisdom of the American establishment is hopelessly out of touch with the real world. What energizes Trump's phenomenon is the very power of rejection. People who think the train is about to head off a cliff would like to pull the emergency cord that stops the train even if they don't know what happens next. To many of Trump's supporters, Hillary Clinton looks like Nurse Ratched in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, the enforcer of a fatally flawed status quo and the personification of bureaucratic power in a system gone rogue. Remember, this is a government that can come and seize your assets if you make a few deposits under $10,000 for a business. In fact, there's going to be a fellow testifying in Congress today about how he was selling milk at a farmer's market and the government seized $60,000 of his money, put him out of business, ruined his life. Or how the IRS comes and harasses people, or the government says a couple of chicken hawks on the prairie mean no one can live there or do business any longer. People are fed up. Trump, meanwhile, dealing with some hecklers inside his rally last night, and the public just eats it up.
Bring them home to mom. Go home to mommy. Go home to mommy. You can get them out. Get them out. Get them out. Is it fun to be at a Trump rally? I mean, is this the greatest?
So a great deal of America is at the point now where they want somebody with a big fist to stick that fist down the throat of the establishment. Trump is doing that, and he is doing it with relish. You can see it, you can hear it, you can feel it. He's enjoying this, and the people, it's cathartic for a great swath of the electorate. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Oh, Bo Bergdahl, we should point out, is not a Trump fan. Perhaps that will convince a few more of you to get on the Trump bandwagon. I don't know, but we'll talk about that coming up in a couple of minutes. 20 minutes now after 8 o'clock. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. It's 53. I was listening to that message earlier from Ramsey Heating and Electric, and we are looking toward, depending on what weather forecast you actually check on, because we go by one that we get through some of our partners here, but I look at several of them online during the course of the day, and, there's not a lot of what I'd call agreement. But the rosier ones say we're looking at a lot of really nice days. The rain that had been predicted for so many days is going to be cleared out. It looks like we may actually get mostly sun through the 3-day holiday weekend that's upcoming. But now that we're getting into that warmer weather, you want to be careful because, obviously, if you flip on the air conditioning unit the first hot day and it doesn't work because it's been off for 10 months, not a good thing. So you want to check it out now and you want to test it. And then if you have an issue, you need to get in touch with Ramsey Heating and Electric. You can call the pros at Ramsey Heating and Electric and make sure the job is done right the first time and set yourself up for a great summer. Now, the business is located at 2600 Overland Avenue in Burley, and you can call them, telephone number 678-0459. That's Ramsey Heating and Electric, where they sell warm winters and cool summers. Ramsey Heating and Electric. 25 minutes now after 8 o'clock. Russell Singleton will join us in just a few minutes from Tripp Family Medicine. We're talking waterborne illnesses today. I know I think a few of us may have dealt with that in the past, and it's not a pleasant thing. But we'll talk about how you can best avoid that, especially with the summer months coming up. I referenced this in the last segment of the program. This is from the Washington Times. Headline, Bo Bergdahl's defense says Donald Trump traitor charge taints the case. In other words, Bergdahl wants to get off scot-free because some months ago Donald Trump referred to him as a traitor Somehow he feels that military officers will go, well, if Donald Trump said it, it must be true. Therefore, we're going to drag Bo out back and swing him from a tree. Because treason is not actually what he's not actually charged with being a traitor. And of course, that could obviously have right now he's just facing a lot of prison time, like the rest of his life locked up in some place like Leavenworth. The writer says in one lengthy motion, his defense team says it needs to counter Mr. Trump and demands that the Army release its 4-month investigation into Sergeant Bergdahl conducted by Army Major General Kenneth Dahl. The defense says Mr. Trump has vilified their client, as have several Fox News commentators. Gee, I wonder why. Maybe it was the fact that he deserted his post, wandered away, and then several people got killed while searching for him while he was trying to go over and commune with the Taliban. The writer says the lawyers claim that the Army has done nothing to rebut the charges that make it difficult for Sergeant Bergdahl to receive a fair trial before military jury members. You know who's behind this? Barack Hussein Obama. Because if Bergdahl is convicted and gets locked up for the rest of his life, then Mr. Obama, who traded 5 Taliban cutthroats for the guy, and those cutthroats are back on the battlefield now trying to kill Americans and some of our allies in that part of the world, then Mr. Obama looks like he doesn't know what he's doing. He looks like an incompetent. So you know there is pressure being put on the military to let Bo go so he can come back and move back to Haley and sell flowers on the street corners. Maybe he can stand there and actually put the flowers in gun barrels, during hunting season or something like that, in imitation of what they used to do back on college campuses in the 1960s. His mom and dad could fill him in all about that. When I took a look at the picture of them in the Rose Garden with President Obama, and I saw the ponytail dangling behind Dad's head and the clothes that they were dressed in, I thought, yeah, all right, we know where he gets it now. 827, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. We mentioned media treatment earlier of Donald Trump, and of course, it's no better apparently with Bergdahl's lawyers. Trump was citing this last night during his rally in New Mexico when he talked a little bit about how they keep claiming on the other side that he's mean to women, and media does that too, but he referenced Ed Rendell. Fast Eddie is the former governor of Pennsylvania and mayor of Philadelphia. And Rendell was on a TV show last week and said half of American women won't vote for Trump because they're ugly and they know Trump doesn't like ugly women. I think Trump likes all women, but we'll leave it at that. This was Trump's response last night.
I've learned, don't even joke a little bit. Don't even joke a little bit. Ed Rendell, okay, he was the mayor of Philadelphia. He's a big, big Hillary Clinton supporter. Okay. Think of this. I was so angry when I heard him say this. But Ed Rendell, big, big women love, and I love women. Shout it out, shout it out. She said, women love you. I love women. Okay. But Ed Rendell, one of Hillary Clinton's biggest supporters, said that half the women in the United States, something to this effect, half the women in the United States are ugly. Nobody even talks about it. Nobody talks about it. Can you imagine if I made that statement? It would be the electric chair.
He pretty much sums up media's treatment and what he can expect over the next several months. I believe it's 166 days now until Election Day, and the pitchforks are coming out from media. They will do everything they can to carry their girl across the finish line, and destroying Trump will be part of that, because that's what they do. They want one of their fellow travelers in government. They want her appointing Supreme Court justices. They want to disarm the American public. Unfortunately, the objectivity that they claim to have once had, and if it was ever there, is long, long gone. Coming up in just a moment, Russell Singleton will join us from Tripp Family Medicine. We're talking waterborne illnesses today. I know you're thinking, how can I get one of those? Well, if you do get one of those, he can tell you how you can treat it. Details coming up in just a few minutes. It's 54 at 8:30. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com.